How could paranormal pursuits help us get through life's most painful challenges? How can human strife or joy provide insight into the supernatural? For many of us, for me, maybe for you, exploring the mysteries of the paranormal is important because it can change our worldview, how we view ourselves, and shape who we become.
A lot of people, they think they want to go out and touch the strangeness. They think they want to go out and touch the ETs or touch the ghosts or what any of this stuff is, okay? And we have a line for this in magic: be careful what you ask for, okay? I've seen more people over the years go running and screaming off into the night, and I never saw them again as a student.
I think what happens when you have some of these impactful experiences, or you really start to question, why you become aware that we're mostly dissatisfied with our lives, on such a profound level. I think it's that point when you start to really want to dive deep into understanding.
You come to try to wrap your mind around ghosts and spirits and apparitions and poltergeists and possessions and demons and all of that kind of stuff. Man, you really have a big hole in you that you're trying to fill. My question to UFOs, it has been very rewarding and very fulfilling, and I neglected because I do follow a religion and a faith and a belief, and I sort of neglected it throughout that time.
I'm a secondhand spiritualist. Secondhand because I started out as a religious person, and then on the other hand was this other stuff that was going on. And this is the hand we're on now. I grew up in New Orleans, and spiritualism and psychic stuff is very much a part of the air and the water there, because we have a lot of voodoo there, a lot of voodoo practices, Santeria, things like this exist there, and they exist on par with Catholicism and African Methodist, Episcopalian churches, and every other religion that's there. Not to the extent that it's legitimate. People still want it to be like evil and slightly illegal, but that's how everybody feels about everyone else's religions anyway. I've always been empathetic to the dead. So, for example, when I was in kindergarten, I went to a school called McDonough 15, and it was an antebellum charter school. It was built the year after the Civil War. In this particular building, there was no room for a kindergarten. This is the part where the white people go. So our kindergarten was in the slave quarters. Right. It sounds bad, but you have to remember that this was a house. So it was kind of nice. We actually had a garden. We had snap peas and a banana tree, and we were taking care of our little tomatoes and strawberries and stuff, At some point during the school year, and we were all called into the cafetorium to have a very important meeting. 5 of the students, 1 in each grade, except for kindergarten. This Vietnamese family, they had been in a fire. 5 of those children were dead. There were 7 children in the family, and 5 were dead. And I shut down. But I didn't shut down the way an adult does now. What happened was that I felt like my heart completely opened to an extent that was dangerous for me. And I don't know what my external reaction was, but my internal reaction was that they all were there. and I was traumatized. So the reaction I was having wasn't to their death, it was to their emotions and their trauma of dying.
My introduction to the paranormal was definitely a UFO experience that I had. I was 12 years old. I was in central New York, and it was just turning night. I was fishing off a dock off the St. Lawrence River, and I saw lights. I look up, and above me was these 3 triangular lights in a triangular formation. There was something in the middle of this formation, a red light or something, and it was very self-contained, very hazy, and kind of vibrating, almost pulsating. And I didn't know what it was, so I called for my father, who was inside a motel we were staying at that was right off of this dock. And he finally came out after some time of me looking up at this, and he saw it with me. So, I knew I wasn't crazy. I knew I wasn't seeing things. And I also knew it wasn't just a plane, because I asked my dad, what is this? What are we looking at here? And neither of us could really figure it out. And it scared both of us. And then this triangular formation, it started floating over the water that I was fishing off of and disappeared over Canada, which was actually right on the other side of the St. Lawrence River. And that event kind of really terrified me. So I would say my introduction to all this really started with fear. And I had nightmares about whatever this triangular formation was in the sky that night for many years to come. And just like a lot of people who get interested in this stuff, I became obsessed.
So my introduction to the paranormal was early on. The original experience I had was with ghosts. And it was when my uncle passed away, and shortly after he passed away, there was dreams in the family of information regarding documents that were hidden. And if it wasn't for the dream, we wouldn't have been able to recover businesses for, his wife and his kid. And it was incredible. That was the first confirmation to me. The dream so vividly indicated to us where to find that information, and it changed her life. If it wasn't for that, she would be basically homeless.
What was your introduction to the paranormal?
Well, I mean, as a child, I think it was probably films, I think Star Wars was pretty early on for me. I have like this vague memory of like going to see, I think it was Return of the Jedi in the theater, and I can still remember vividly the picture.
I'm sorry.
Remember, a Jedi strength flows from the Force.
As you get older and you start to learn the vastness of the universe, those kind of concepts all of a sudden become like, they're not fantasy, that could be reality.
The most impactful experience was ET contact, and the first time that I experienced that was in 2013 when I was directly removed from my bedroom into craft, introduced to a number of information, including my purpose, what I was here, what I was here to do, the history of my soul as I incarnated into this physical body and what I was supposed to be doing. And ultimately, they introduced me to hybrid children that were my own, that I had participated in creating apparently throughout my entire life without my, recollection of it occurring. And so that was the most impactful thing. And I struggled with that, but my confirmation was the fact that I woke up that next day upside down, hanging off the side of my bed with these abilities to see the multidimensional body. And from that day on, my life completely changed. I was able to see entities, attachments, colors, the auric field, extreme sensitivity to people's emotions, feelings, and thoughts. And it really just opened up. It ripped the veil of the unknown to me in a way that I never would have experienced otherwise.
A lot of you might hear a lot of people say, oh, they saw something when they were young, or they have a family member who saw things, or maybe a lot of military families grow up with stories about strange things and like that. That was not my situation at all, so I was pretty much oblivious to it for most of my life. Then I met a guy, and he had grown up researching, reading all the books and everything. And so that was truly my first introduction. So my field is ufology.
So really quick, so romance is what brought you into?
Yeah, exactly. Romance brought me to the paranormal. Yes, world, exactly. Yeah, so just another human being, regular human being. Yeah, and then the rest is just, I mean, once you find out that UFOs are real and are being seen, you know, in your own neighborhood, but it's not ending up on CNN, like, wow, I have to find out more.
I'm a science guy, as most people know. And so paranormal is the unproven potential future science, as far as I'm concerned. I didn't always feel that way. But after seeing what was going on and hearing more stories and hearing people that are incontrovertibly accurately portraying what they believe to be true, I felt that at the very least we should entertain the possibility that what they were saying was real.
My aunt had 2 haunted houses when I was younger. She lived in southern Indiana, and I had never been able to sleep at her houses because of these beings that were there. One of them was a lady who was in Victorian dress, and she would sit at the piano, and I never really heard any music, but you could see her shadow and her person just sitting at the piano. That was one of my first experiences. Another one was just these shadows upstairs in her home. I could never sleep at her house. There was always something, either doors opening on their own, disembodied sounds, and that was probably my introduction.
My memory goes back as far as first grade. As far as my first paranormal experience, I went through some shifts in my life and had a little bit of trauma, and I started seeing shadow people. And at the time, I didn't understand what they were. Of course, I was in first grade. I just saw these figures who were dark and mysterious. I never felt afraid. I never wondered what they were. I just assumed, hey, we all see these. I'm just seeing them for my first time, whatever they are. And it wasn't until I spoke to my brother, who was in the same room with me. I woke him up one night and I was like, look, those are the figures I'm talking about. But he couldn't see them. Well, as I grew up, there were moments of time I would see shadow people, and they always seemed to come around me during the times that were more challenging, where there was more darkness in my life. And it was just a comfort that they were there and I wasn't alone. Little did I know, they were probably just feeding off the negative energy more so than there to assist me.
I had moved back to my parents' house. I want to say, I don't know, I was 19, maybe 20. And I was, kind of doing a job change, and I was going to stay there for a couple of weeks until my place was ready. And I had gone out and was smoking on the porch, and they had a street light right out at the end of the driveway. And I was just sitting there on the porch, man, and I'm like smoking, and I look out and I see something kind of catch my eye. I didn't know what it was, but I could see it. And it was moving, and so I kind of locked in on it, and I'm looking, and it turned out to be what I perceived as 3 human outlines, like a silver lining around the outer edge of a man, what looked like a man, a woman, and a kid walking up the street. Not the whole detail of their, it wasn't like full apparitions like, you hear about on TV and things. It was just it was like the light from that street light they were catching that light on the edge closest to them. If the light's over here, this side was what was lit up, the outside edge of their head and their arm. And the further away they got from the light, the dimmer it got, the dimmer it got, and the dimmer it got. And I remember thinking, in the movies, when something like that happens, like they'll look at whatever they're holding or smoking or eating or drinking, like, does this got something in it or something? I looked right at my cigarette like, wait a minute, you know what I mean? Like, is there some additive in this that's causing me to, become imbalanced? I honestly didn't know what I couldn't process it right then.
What would qualify as my first paranormal UFO event was certainly my childhood UFO sighting. It happened in Rockville Center, Long Island, a little village about 30 miles east of Manhattan, where my sister Helen and I grew up, and was a very unambiguous daylight sighting involving 5 silvery white disc-shaped objects in a very precise V formation. I had somehow managed to repress the memory. It overwhelmed me. It made me break down. It upset me tremendously. And I finally calmed down knowing that this had happened. And as I began to wonder what to do, the answer was right there: call my sister. However, I had enough foresight to realize that if I just called her, said I remembered this from childhood, blurted out my memory, she'd say yes or no. And that wasn't okay. I needed to know what she knew, and I only had one shot at it. So I did call her. She lived a mile or so north of me in the East Village, aspiring poet, and asked her if it was a good time to talk. She said it was, and I said, I've remembered something from our childhood, and I need to know what you remember. But I'm concerned if I tell you what I remembered. She got it, and so I set the scene. How old we were, how the weather was, about the time of day, where we were standing in proximity to each other, and she cut me off mid-sentence and stop, I know what you're talking about. And then proceeded to tell me almost in exact detail what I remembered, which was overwhelming to me, and in a split way. Essentially, oh my God, they're real, and oh my God, they're real. And then she said something that really completely changed my life, which was, but there's more, and I don't know what you're going to think about it, how you're going to feel about it. And then proceeded to tell me something I had never heard anything like before in my life. Now I've heard hundreds of times. Around the country, around the world, I've read accounts, some of them almost word for word. They were very clear fragments of memory that she had never forgotten, but never felt compelled to discuss, of being taken, being floated off the ground, her hair flying in the distance, looking down, seeing me, who had either been knocked out or passed out, never happened to me before, and looking for the first and last time in her life at the roof of the house we grew up in get smaller, and then look up and see the bottoms of these ships get larger. And then very clear memories of being on board, of walking through a metal hallway. This was in the mid-70s. The term gray had not entered the literature, and she described them in the terms she invented when she was 12, which was little doctors with big heads and big eyes who talked to me in my head. And there were a number of archetypical grays and one very tall one that she identified as the leader. Not unusual at all in these scenarios. No anxiety, no real concern, just kind of being interested, which of course is totally counterintuitive, but that's the way it is. And then remembering being on the table, 12-year-old girl, no clothes on, with all these little beings standing around her, and hearing in her head, you're special, you've seen us before, you'll see us again, or we've seen you before, we'll see you again. I don't remember offhand. We love you, and the like.
I recognize that there's something else out there beyond life, you know. When my father passed away, I saw him go. I saw him leave his body. And as a science person, I tried to explain it away as a foggy mist. Maybe I was sad or something. But we had 30 days to recognize he wasn't going to wake up from this coma. So when he went, I reached out and I touched this weird fog, and it wasn't cold or warm, but it did have an emotion. and it was an emotion of bewilderment, like what just happened, kind of a thing. Like what happened, And that was my first introduction to the possibilities.
Seeing my dead Uncle Nick standing over in the corner, all smiles, chatting with people, and me as a first grader wondering who put the wax dummy in the box. That was the first good dose that I had. That I had the family's clairvoyant gift. Is when I looked back over, him and those people weren't there, and that's when I became very aware that I'm aware of a much bigger world. If you want to look at it from the extraterrestrial side, 5. I remember as clearly as I do the production team. I remember 2 little guys with big bulbous heads and big eyes taking me someplace. And when I didn't want to go through the doorway or the hatch or whatever it was, because it was dark in there, I struggled with them, and I didn't remember until I woke up. And this happened several times. And the goofy thing about that was, in those days, this is mid-1950s, Mom used to put me in one of those pajama little suits and zip you up. It took you 20 minutes to get the legs in and everything like that. And on those mornings, she would come in and my suit would be laying on the floor, and I was in bed with no clothes on. And so that was my first ET event.
Accepted? The paranormal? Was that?
No, they just figured I figured some way to get it off. They never asked me what was going on with me.
I had a experience where my husband's friend, who died in the World Trade Center attacks of 9/11, came to me in a very lucid, vivid dream. Oh, and by the way, I never met my husband's friend. I only spoke to him on the phone, okay? But when I had this dream, I knew it was him. And that was very odd, but the fact is, intuitively, I knew who he was when I saw him. I felt myself going through this long hallway, and I come to a door on my right. I go through the door, and I see desks and windows everywhere. And all of a sudden, I look up, and I see my husband's friend. So when I saw Rich, his response to me, what he said to me was, it was all mind-to-mind communication. He said, "Thank you for mentioning me in your book." I looked at him and I said, "Rich, you have to prove to me that this is really you." And he picked up what looked like one of those Motorola flip phones that they used to have years ago. And he opened up the phone. He showed me a picture of him, his wife, and his son. And he looked at me and he said, "Boston is okay." I had no idea whatsoever what Boston is okay meant at the time, but I understood that this was a message that he wanted me to get to his wife, if that makes any sense. And next is kind of going through what looked like and felt like a window, and kind of being on the street and seeing what I would describe as the bed of a pickup truck. I don't know why, but that's what it looked like. And he's standing behind his wife and son. He's like, "Okay, now Josie, give them the message," and kind of pushes me forward, And when he did that, I woke up in a sitting position, panting and out of breath. I was just like, was I scared? Absolutely. Nothing like that had ever happened before. But I called my husband up, who was already at work. I told him what happened, and I said, "Honey, you have to tell Rich's wife that Boston is okay." And how do you think he responded? He responded like I was off my rocker, He was like, "No way, you're crazy, I'm not doing this. You want me to call her and tell her that Boston is okay? It makes no sense." We basically compromised, and I sent him an email. He forwarded the email to Richard's sister-in-law, his wife's sister. Well, as soon as he hit send, Alan, he was like, oh my God, I should have never have done that. Oh, she's going to think I'm nuts and all that. So fast forward 2 weeks, and we're on vacation. and my husband gets a message on his BlackBerry from Rich's sister-in-law, and she basically says, well, I don't know, how your wife knew this, but her sister has a brother in Boston, was considering selling her home and moving to Boston, but felt guilty because she purchased a house right before her husband died, okay? So now the message, he was telling me, tell my wife it's okay, she can move to Boston. But I had no knowledge at all. I didn't know anything about her. I didn't know she had a brother in Boston. I didn't know she was considering selling her home. I didn't know any of that. I never even met him. I never met his wife. I never met anyone, It kind of shook me to the core. At first, to be perfectly honest with you, I was afraid. I thought, okay, people are going to think I'm nuts. I don't want to share this story. But it's something that you can't ignore, it changes you. Something about it just changes you. So I was talking to my sister-in-law, and she said to me, she said, Josie, don't you realize that you've been given a gift? And when she said that to me, it kind of hit me. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I have been given a gift. And I should use this to help others understand that life doesn't end and that love never dies.
I'm not religious, but I am spiritual. And there's a number of reasons for the spirituality. 5.5 years ago, I had to have surgery. It went south, and I woke up as a quadriplegic and blind. And that was, you might say, difficult. But it was difficult for everybody else, not for me. The reason was because I knew I was going to be fine. The reason? I was told I was going to be fine. I had, during the surgery, during the 3.5 hours that my heart was actually stopped, I was taken out of the hospital and whisked to New Mexico. Science guy, this stuff doesn't happen to me until it does. Then what do you do with it? Figure out where it goes. And there were Native Americans. My mother was Native American. They guided me on a journey to stop something deadly that was heading for me. There was this black amorphous object over what was, moments earlier, a beautiful New Mexico sunset. Okay? And it was really making the area, that everything looking around looked like it was gray and muddy. And one of the Native American kid, there was a woman with him, and I never saw her face. The kid comes over to me and puts a gun in my lap. And I was a rag doll. I couldn't move. And I was like this, going, very funny. What am I supposed to do with this? And he goes, we have to shoot that object in front of the sun. Okay, it's imperative. You've got to do this with us. And I was like, well, how am I supposed to grab it? He looks at me and he goes, it's symbology. And she said something in Navajo, and I knew it was Navajo, don't ask me how. And he looks at me and he goes, oh, she's right. He goes, she says you're pretty thick. You're a thick head. I'm like, oh. So I just imagine that I'm shooting this thing, and as I do, I see it flaking away. Okay? And they're shooting, and it's loud, and it's painful to my ears because they're right next to me. I can't see her. I only see him right here. Bang, bang, bang. And I'm thinking, bang, bang. And every time I thought that, I couldn't turn my head. I could only move my eyes. When it all goes away, it's a beautiful New Mexican sunset again. The kid, smiling now, comes over to me after this thing's been blown away, puts his arm around my shoulder and says, you are going to be all right. He says, you know that, right? He says, you are. And he points right at me. He goes, you are going to be all right. I went, yeah, I think so. I think I know that. Cut to the next phase. I'm hearing the doctors say we got to keep him in this coma to see if he can survive. And I was wide awake for 5 days. I nodded off every now and then, but for 5 days while I was in this coma, I was actually wide awake. I could hear everything. I relayed conversations I heard, and guess what? They denied that I heard them. Even though I relayed word for word what some of the doctors said, including the neurologist who came in on the left of the bed while I was in the coma and over my comatose body, said to my family on this side, at best we think he'll be a quadriplegic and blind, so you better prepare. And I'm moving inside. No, look, I'm moving my legs around. And of course I never heard anything. So I realized, okay, they're talking about me. Well, that's not going to last long. I was told I was going to be all right, and I believe that. When the doctor came in to ask me if I was okay, if I could move, he said I couldn't, he's a doctor, I was an astronomer. We agreed, we met in our sciences, our individual sciences. Well, anyway, he leans over to me and he goes, I want to tell you what happened. He said, during the surgery, when we restarted your heart, apparently there was a clot that got away from us and it went to your brain. And he goes, you're here, such as you are, we're hoping you're going to get better to some degree. He goes, but you're here because the clot exploded and made tiny strokes throughout your brain rather than one major stroke. That's why you lived. Now, I had a trach at the time. I couldn't talk. And I'm sitting there laying there going like this, going, because you can hear this excitement. Go, oh, I know what that was. I know what that was. I know what that was.
Everyone has hardships in their life, and will never truly, I think, understand each individual and what they've been through. But yeah, for me, I grew up with a very sick mother. I mean, she was a diabetic almost since birth, and she had to deal with some of the most emotionally draining, physically challenging things throughout her entire life. Up until the point where when I was maybe 14 or 15 years old, she sat me down and said, I'm probably not going to be here much longer. And as a kid, to hear that, I can't even describe it. I didn't understand it, and I didn't want to believe it, but we had that talk. And as the years went on, it got harder and harder, and I would have to go watch her get dialysis. She was a diabetic, and her body was shutting down. And the one person who raised you, who bore you, who you put all your trust and faith and love in, was dying. I can't even really describe that, but just like anything in life, you kind of move on. You renegotiate the way you see the world, and fortunately, she was able to have an organ transplant that ultimately saved her life. So, I mean, talk about having like a happy ending to this story. But I will say, throughout the years, that was rough, and as a kid, I kind of lost those years because there was a lot of taking care of her and having to sacrifice a lot of things to make sure she was okay, while my father went to work and provided for his family. So yeah, it was tough. It was definitely a hardship, something I dealt with my whole life. It was my normal, but I honestly wouldn't have it any other way. It's made my relationship with my parents so strong, and I came out on the other side truly appreciating not only my parents, but appreciating life more than anything.
I had a so-called partner who was an investigator with MUFON, and he decided that he was going to park out in back of my house and stare up at me in my room while I was painting or recording, and would definitely scare me. He scared me. It happens. I mean, people get sick obsessions, and when you put yourself out there as a personality, you are allowing a certain amount of publicity, and you do become sort of a target. When I started doing the radio shows with KGRA, it was mainly because I had reached out to MUFON after having a sighting of a craft. Later on down the line, it led me to a group called CE5, the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, which is human-initiated contact with extraterrestrials or other beings. And it was very helpful because I realized that there were other people with gifts and talents and that there was a support system for people like me. And it was very helpful to have somebody that I could talk to without any judgment, without any feeling of persecution. Sending my kids to Catholic schools, it has caused me a lot more stress and anxiety, because I don't want a lot of those people to hear what's going on with me and think that there's something wrong with my family and that my kids are bad kids, or, you know, there's a potential for something weird to happen with their kids.
Growing up, I was not one of the popular kids, and you know, being kind of a nerdy kid back then wasn't cool. I experienced a lot of, you know, being kind of harassed, bullied to a certain extent, made fun of. And when you're young, it's hard to deal with, and I didn't deal with it really well until I got older, and I learned how to kind of be stronger and rise above that sort of thing. And it's mentally very difficult for a child to deal with those kind of emotions. As you grow up, other things, you know, I've had relationships that went really poorly, and the emotional heartache that can come from a relationship going sour is pretty profound also. I remember thinking, I don't think my heart could survive another breakup like this. And those moments definitely they make you search. They kind of make you think a lot. The actual event for a lot of people is not the thing that causes the trauma. The trauma is caused by reliving this event over and over in your brain for however long it takes you to get over it. For some people, that's, you know, a short experience. They don't experience very much trauma from that. Other people, they might never get over those things.
I think about it now. I try to suss this out. I have a painting over there that we just took off the wall. That's really a memory of what it was like to be trapped in sort of a V.C. Andrews environment where the curtains are drawn and there's these little shafts of light in, and I very much felt like I was being hidden from the world. I was not. My mom was learning about it later. My mom was depressed because her father died. She started drinking, and so she's probably hungover, didn't want the windows open. You know what I mean? She's smoking, and I don't know what any of these things mean. I just know that my world used to be in the sunshine and now it is in the dark, and I would trip. I was able to look into the beams of light and focus on the dust motes and the way that light can radiate. I was able to see particles, like see their waves. And part of that was probably the cigarette smoke that was around, how it reflects the light and everything. But part of it was just the level of concentration and focus that I could have. But also it was like pulsating and radiating. And I knew that I didn't just live in this world.
I'm the youngest of 5 kids, and I had 3 older sisters and an older brother. My oldest sister was about 11 years older than me. So she was like a sister and a mother to me when I was little. And I was 14 when we lost her to a car accident. And it was sudden. There was no getting to say goodbye or, matter of fact, my last time I talked to her was I kind of threw a fit because she wasn't going to be at my football game. She was always in the stands watching her little baby brother, and she started dating this guy that I didn't like at all. I didn't like him at all. And they were going to a party at a farm outside of town, and she wasn't going to be able to make it because of something they had planned and whatever. Totally understandable to an adult. I was in the 9th grade at the time, and I was like, disgruntled that she wasn't coming and whatever, and I kind of just walked off and left it at that, like I was upset about it, and I didn't say, well, it's all right, you'll see the next one or whatever. None of that. It was, I can't believe you're going to some party and you're not coming to my game. I can't believe, so that was the last words I had with her. And leaving that party her boyfriend was very, very intoxicated, and he rolled his truck, and she got killed. And I'll never forget the coroner, the county coroner, and the sheriff knocking on the door that night. Watching my family fall apart after that was something that changed me forever. Because, and I'll say this because, and I've never said this publicly, I looked around and I was the only one left. And my brothers and sisters, we were really close. We were always there for each other, and I always confided in my brothers and sisters with things. And I always got the best advice and support. Well, I kind of rolled that over, turned that over to what I thought were my good friends at the time, guys that I hung out with and played football with, and even in Boy Scouts with. And I shared a lot of things and expressed a lot of concerns and worries and fears and things like that later they turned around and used against me. And you can't pierce a heart much deeper than that.
I served on a nuclear submarine, 2 service veteran. I've been through a sex change, and I've had my blood family shun me. All of those things any one of those things would have devastated some people and crippled them or taken them out, okay? I embraced the bigger hugging arms around me, so to speak, okay, the force. And if you let that in and you make, as they say, friends with it, instead of poking it all the time, like a lot of people, like a lot of the investigators do, I'm never alone. I'm never alone.
Certainly the worst experience I ever had in my life, the most despairing, the roughest one to come to grips with, was watching my sister die in a hospital bed over 3 nights and 4 days, and knowing I could do nothing to stop it. I would have been happy to take her place at a certain point. You know, you're all of a sudden words, hopelessness, despair, sorrow that meant X to you now mean Y. And it took me more than a year to really come back into the world.
I met a man, thought I fell totally, completely in love with him. It was a very abusive relationship from the beginning, me being an empath, him being a narcissist to the letter. And I didn't understand all of that then. It was a very bad combination. A couple of years of continual emotional, physical, mental abuse, all of those things that you go through in a relationship with a narcissist. Everyone's pretty aware of that, I'm sure. But the physical part, like, I always felt like I could get through it. And I have, but that was the ultimate moment where my life forever changed, where he took it too far. And some has said I had an NDE. I've researched NDEs, and I've interviewed many people who have had NDEs, and I'm sure it's on some level thereof. I wasn't here. Spiritually. My soul was not connected to my body by any means, and it was a result of being beaten to death, at least unconsciously. And, you know, the aftermath of that, changed me.
I lost my partner. He overdosed on a medication when he was detoxing, and I lost him from one day to the next. And it was terrible because, I went through a struggle with him of going through rehab, supporting him and all that stuff, and the moments of crisis when he was going through all that. But finally, when we got to a stable point, he went back to home just to let his family know what was happening. And then I got the phone call from his mother that told me, he passed away the night before, and this was right during Thanksgiving. So it was a tremendous shock to me, and it basically, shook up my whole reality. That was the beginning of me becoming aware of, questioning reality, how we end up at these kinds of powerful experiences. And I began to meditate. I began my training in 2009, 2008, where I went under a shaman to learn about healing and meditation. And I practiced and became certified in pranic energy healing, quantum energy healing, just to understand this world that I had been so closely tied to throughout my life, but never really experienced, in person. And I think that powerful experience really kind of threw me into this questioning of reality, of why we experience so much suffering. As I look around me and I see family members, friends, everyone seems to be happy on the outside, but really true joy and true happiness is something that sometimes is hard to find. So I question that if we're doing everything that we're supposed to be doing, if I'm got the education, I have I'm on track in my career, I have my businesses, I'm successful in all these other areas, but really I felt so empty inside.
So I mean, I've been through it where it comes to like job stuff, career stuff not going how you expect it to. Been through that. I've lost my father, pretty young. My siblings were even younger. My sister was in high school at the time. So that was devastating. And that absolutely, I think, it's interesting, found out about UFOs after that. But I definitely think, just being aware of your mortality and that, we're not on this planet forever. It's very, very temporary. So totally, I'm sure that led to like looking to the stars more and being interested in it. And yeah, I do think it's comforting. What do you want to call it? Metaphysics, spirituality, or, maybe you're Buddhist or maybe you're Christian or whatever. It's just the idea of thinking outside of yourself. And so when you zoom out and you're imagining the cosmos and what else could be out there, I mean, your day-to-day stuff just goes away. That's why I enjoy, sharing about UFOs and aliens and space with people, because I hope it can be a little escape, for them as well.
Most of life is mundane. It's checking the mail, it's waiting for a bus, it's hoping somebody texts you back, it's having another bowl of cereal and going, oh God, am I still having cereal? A lot of life is pain, which is loss, grief, confusion, and then joy is fleeting, which is why we pursue it. Because we're chasing it, it goes away. So you have to be where you are.
I was born with a disability known as cerebral palsy. And because of that, I also suffer from a hearing impairment. So that was definitely difficult because I grew up in a wheelchair. I learned how to walk with leg braces. And I was often picked on and made fun of because of it. So in many ways, it's ironic because it was one of the hardest things that I've had to deal with in my life. But in many ways, it's also a blessing And in many ways, I wouldn't change a thing, because it's made me who I am. Because having that disability and growing up the way that I did has allowed me to help others, has allowed me to inspire and motivate others.
At the time, I wasn't really allowed to do too much work on myself, being in that type of a relationship. So I wasn't studying, I wasn't asking questions. I was staying quiet and obedient and in my own lane. And so no, beforehand I was pretty numb. Afterwards, my soul ached to know what I saw, what I had experienced in those moments I wasn't here. And I wanted that feeling again. I wanted to go home. That's what I felt like the most amazing warmth that I have ever experienced in my life. And I wanted to feel it again. And if I was here having this human experience, I want to know how I can feel that way, because that's how I want to be. That's the essence of how I want to feel, and I would like others to feel around me.
I think that my search for answers, my search for knowledge, and understanding life after death has reinforced my faith in, I don't know, a God, a higher purpose, a higher being, a supreme being, whatever you want to call it. It has also reinforced my belief in life after death. So I think that I have more faith now than I ever did.
I think we're all so individual from one another, and this religion isn't going to fit me, but it might fit you, or this belief system might fit you, but it might not fit me. And I feel like it's part of our human experience to really dig in deep to our essence of what fills our heart and soul, what feels good to us that is going to assist us in being better, being human. One day it might be one thing for me, and the next day it might be something else, but every day I commit to believing and practicing something, so I don't just go out into the world blindly and on autopilot like I used to live, because there's so much to experience.
I consider myself Wiccan, okay, but what I'm going to call nouveau Wiccan, very, very, very advanced, very modified, very modern Wiccan. And my day-to-day spiritual practice is Buddhist philosophy. And I was part of the Tibetan Orthodox Buddhist monastery for 7 years. And I was part of the monastic group, okay? And I didn't get along with some of the monks and nuns because I had this paranormal view, and it creeped them out. The lamas were cool with it, okay? The lamas were cool with it. They had a rainstorm one time up there, and the rain wouldn't quit. It was one of those El Nino years. It was just coming down like somebody turned on a faucet. And one of the elder nuns went up to the lama who was visiting and said, we can't start the big fire for the ceremony to do the offerings and everything. I said, go find that novice Tashi, it's me, and she knows how to turn off the rain. So took me out there with a nun with an umbrella. I made a few offerings of peanuts and rice, made a few chants, blew a horn. The rain stopped, and gave them 30 minutes to get the fire going.
My question to UFOs, it has been very rewarding and very fulfilling, and I neglected. I do follow a religion and a faith and a belief, and I sort of neglected it throughout that time. I replaced it, if you will. The paranormal and religion, have sort of a common thread between them.
We got a couple of problems in the paranormal UFO community. One, all these topics, cryptozoology, dowsing, ghost hunting, UFOs, all these things, they tend to stovepipe this stuff. It's all one phenomena, Now, on the paranormal side, with all of this stuff, working magic, people in some traditions say, oh, you're working the devil's work. No. It's the Force. Just like George Lucas talks about in the movies, it's the Force. And there are people who are adept at manipulating the energies, manipulating the Force. And if you're gentle with it, and you don't have to do big ceremonies and don't expect bright flashes and lightning and everything. Real magic is as gentle as a baby's breath. And that's the hardest thing to convince a lot of people, because they see all the special effects in Harry Potter and all this stuff, and they expect all the whiz bang, and real magic isn't like that.
In the Torah, it says, God created atheists so that we would know that people can do good things without the promise of a reward. You have to stay away from dogma. That was the point of the Buddha, that was the point of the Christ, that was the point of Muhammad. You have to stay away from dogma. You're supposed to be a spiritual energy in a physical body, doing good things, and trying to bring people to enlightenment.
In the moment, so many things can be godly. So many things can be, this awe-inspiring experience that would push your mind to another level. Monks do it. That's what they've devoted their lives to get to higher places in the mind. And humans have done it for eons. They've used ayahuasca, they mushrooms and all kinds of things to try to achieve higher levels of understanding and where and why we are.
When I looked up as a 9-year-old at the sky and I wanted to know, how do those star clusters form? Where do those nebulae come from? How are they made and why? And that wonder is in science forever. And in the paranormal, the wonder comes from the lack of understanding of the paranormal. I think that today's paranormal is tomorrow's science, potentially. Have you ever had an experience where you're thinking about a friend you haven't talked to in years, and the phone rings and it's that friend? I was just thinking of you. How many times have you said that in your life? It's an often ignored potential scientific finding, and it was Carl Sagan, I think, who said it best, somewhere something wonderful is waiting to be known.
When I was pregnant with my first daughter, it was about 2009, and I remember waking up to this really bright blue light, and in the blue light there were two beings, two separate lights, I guess the shape of a circle, but they weren't really orbs. That had sort of a fluid movement, and there were two faces. So I wake up to see these two faces looking at me, and I start screaming and I start kicking because it was just so shocking. And these beings are talking to me, and one of them says, how do we keep you from screaming? How do we make you stop screaming? How can we comfort you so that you're not freaking out? And I said, you can go away. And I remember this overwhelming sensation of almost peace. We're trying to find our place in the universe and our relationship to either a higher source or the spiritual realm, because we all have a short lifetime, right? We're only here for a certain amount of time, and we've all had someone that we've lost. And the idea of maybe reconnecting with them on a spiritual level, or finding some kind of way to communicate with them again is part of humanity. It's part of the process. I think that it's honestly part of who we are as humans to have these psychic experiences. And maybe some people have a glimpse, and that glimpse is what gets them interested in the paranormal. And then they go hunting for it. They search for it. So yeah, enlightenment is just more information.
I never forget that this is really happening. This is real. I realized some time back that those questions that haunted me, that obsessed me, that drove me all those original years of who are they? Why are they here? Where do they come from? What do they have for breakfast? What are their homes like? How are they made? You know, what is their goals? Has been displaced to one degree or another by my primary interest, which is the impact that this reality has on living, breathing human beings, many of whom were simply minding their business, trying to live their lives, when this reality intruded upon them.
Our world and our universe is bigger than we could ever imagine. I think that each of us has a path to go down, and I don't think that there's anything that we can say that can prepare a person for a visitation from another planet or dimension, but it's been a journey that I wouldn't trade for the world. I've been lucky to have a relationship now where I have a new husband, and he has been very supportive. He is also a Bigfoot investigator. So he has a broad range of beliefs that sort of coincide with the things that have happened to me. So he can understand a little bit more of my experiences.
For some people, this is a very spiritual undertaking. For others, it's extremely pragmatic. And who's to say who's wrong?
It's interesting. I guess there's folks like you and me and, our community where I guess clearly, the proof is in the pudding. It does provide comfort. But for some people, it really has to stay in that coast to coast AM land, because it is fun and curious and it's interesting, but there's another side of it, which is the reality of it, like with anything. And that actually can cause extreme discomfort. So I think it's a kind of back and forth thing, to be honest. But I also think that's kind of what the human experience is, and it's just yin and yang, and it's all peaceful and amazing, and it's also scary and confusing.
We attach meaning to our own lives, maybe for them, like what I do, for instance. Okay, so I research life after death. Maybe for somebody else that makes no sense. It has no meaning for them, but it has meaning for me. We can attach meaning to Bigfoot, whatever it is. I mean, whatever speaks to you.
I believe that anyone who explores the paranormal can garner meaning. I don't believe that we're all searching for the same thing as individuals. Collectively, we probably are. If you think about it, we are all seeking for something that's bigger than us, our purpose, our meaning of life. Why are we here? Why do we exist? Why do we have these hard experiences? Why are we giving these beautiful experiences? Everyone's answers, everyone's perception is going to look different in the end, regardless if it's the same thing.
Learning from each experience can happen. You can still learn from an entity that looks bizarre and feel a good presence. You can get a sense of love.
We're seeing a shift where more and more of these people are saying that it's a positive experience, that it has helped them to grow, that there are aspects of it for some people that are religious or quasi-religious, that it can be compared to, for certain individuals, the ecstatic sensations that many associate with psychedelics or with falling in love with someone. Anything that helps you to live your life more fully, more connected with other human beings, makes you into a more compassionate and empathetic person. This does that for sure.
There's the abductee that will talk about having like a deep connection, or people that talk about summoning UFOs, and they say it's peaceful, or they'll say it's almost like they were with Jesus, right? Or some spiritual figure or something like that.
There's been different entities that have come that have had a calming effect on me. One of them was like in the shape of a person, but it was more of a pink, energetic being, more like light than physical form. And I did feel love from this entity, and I remember being a little bit fearful, but I could feel the sense of love coming off of her. And I said, if you want to touch me, I won't move. I'm just going to put my hand out. And it was just one little touch from the fingertip to fingertip, and I remember feeling this warmth come over my body, and I thought, oh my God, that was amazing, because it was totally different than anything else that I had experienced before. I'd never touched one that I could remember, and I think that it was to let me know that there are good things that can come from these experiences.
I go to pagan circles, and there'll be 25, 30 people there in a circle, guests and things, and someone will say, well, before we start the ceremony, does anybody have a special intention? I came into one circle and said, I make this offering for every being, everywhere, every when. And the person after me said what she said. It's big. It's the most powerful force in the universe. Don't spoon it out by the spoonful. That's love.
When we get to express that love and we get to experience that love, and you know, that's where you get a real connection with him, with God, whatever, her, whatever you choose to call it. But for me, love is God. Love is our creator. Love is our ability to express a connection with someone else on a divine level.
Another thing that people talk about is communication with beings when they're on psychedelic drugs. Are you communicating with something that is authentically a real being, or are you manifesting this whole experience? When you do some of those psychedelic drugs, I think that it opens the door to having experiences that make you kind of wonder about the way our minds work. If you have a shared hallucination with someone, what happened there? You know, how did you both have the same hallucination? You know it's not real. You know that the thing that you saw didn't really happen. That would be an easy explanation as to how you both had the same experiences as if it really happened. But when you have those experiences, you know they were hallucinations, but both of you had the same experience. That's strange. And that leads me towards believing the concept of a shared consciousness. And the fact that consciousness could be different than we've thought of, that gives me hope, absolutely. I think that this concept that we are all connected in a way that we don't fully understand is a very real concept.
I don't think it's a coincidence. We have quotes and songs and movies and belief systems and practices that circle around this belief that we are all one love. Love is a vibration. Love is an energy. And whether that's a friendship, a romantic love, a partnership, whatever that looks like, it's all one energy. Our souls all being interconnected. I'm always talking about love is the answer. Love always wins. What would love say? What would love do? Because my biggest belief and my biggest healer in every experience I've ever had, from healing anger, learning to forgive, learning to love myself, learning to love others, has all been learning and getting familiar with that one love, that one vibration.
If we're going to talk in terms of like the one that I decided to kind of take my life journey with, and experience life through her eyes and through my eyes and our journey together, that's love. You know, it's gonna be ugly at times, it's gonna be awesome, you're gonna have to sacrifice certain things, and that's great. If you can find someone to have that powerful of an experience with, take it and like hold on to it and don't take advantage of it. And I think that is love. That is the reason we're here. You know, beyond friends that you might be smoking weed with, or you know, a relationship you're in, there is some sort of universal fabric.
There's the intuitive self and what we know to be true. There's the programs that we're experiencing and we're being taught from what we see around us, which is a way of being that's mostly safe, in a state of survival, really, because we're doing what is required to keep us safe, to keep us out of problems, you know, to keep us out of fights, out of conflict. That this is what we're heavily programmed to believe. And so we lose touch with what it is to be a human, this authentic expression of a human. And I believe that it takes time. It takes time to kind of uncover that. It really would take dedicated effort to question your belief system and see if are those even your beliefs. I realized in my journey that a lot of those beliefs I really didn't even agree with. I didn't agree with the idea of what a man should be or his role in a partnership, for example. So it kind of shifted those things, and it really on a larger scale, you're looking at cultures, society, race, sex, all of these things that we are being shown to be heavily compartmentalized, heavily separate. The human ends up feeling so disconnected from everything. We feel completely isolated from ourselves and what's outside. So in order to go back to what's real, we need to connect with ourselves, because within us, within every design, within every cell of our body is basically the design of this entire universe.
Every human, every animal, every living organism on this planet is connected through. And you can look at that scientifically, you can look at it religiously, and every way in between. But again, there seems to be something far bigger than any of us.
There's two camps. There's a religious camp and there is a science camp. And the two camps are chomping at the bit to try to figure out this. And I think the science camp doesn't like to be told that their 8-9 years of school isn't worth shit when you try to wrap your mind around something like this. So they're not so ready to believe it. They're not so ready to try to dive onto it or go pursue it, which just baffles me, Alan, because science is founded on question. It's founded on the unknown. Science was created to understand what you can't explain.
We are a piece of a whole, not separate. So all of your beliefs, that's great, but they have to be constantly evolving. You really got to sit and process that, what that means. You know, you're just borrowing this body for a moment. You're everything and nothing at the same time, and we got to help the ego process that. You know, and I believe that's where the support has to be, and it's continuous. It's in this moment. If you say something to me right now that bugs me or triggers me, you know, I can get really angry, but what did I get out of it? What did you get out of it? Nobody gets anything out of it. If you say something to me and then I listen to it and I try to understand your side of it, you know, I can learn something. It's like being able to look at something from above, not having a myopic vision, just looking at something from your perspective, from your chair. You have the ability of looking at things from all chairs in a room.
We're humans trying to wrap a human experience around something that is not human. So we have to wade through all of that human expression and human opinion and human understanding and human application to a lot of this, and the scientific value has a certain level of credence to it. We need to be able to keep applying science to it. But J. Allen Hynek may have said it best when he said we may need to put on our spiritual glasses to completely understand what this is.
Science is slow to react, and science is slow to come on board, and that's fair. Science has to do the diligence, the hard work that the lay people won't do. They'll just believe outright without proof, which we see in this arena all the time. And that's okay, because it means that we just got to get off our behinds and come up with some proof. We have a spirit that looks outward. We want to know what's out there.
Do you like being in the paranormal community? Do you enjoy it?
For the most part, yeah. In the subject of ufology, which is that's where I find myself at home. Over 30 years with it. 3 times I've walked away from it. 3 times I've just found myself fed up, or, like I've chased my tail so long that I've bitten the thing clean off. And so I've stepped back, and all 3 times I've returned.
I think the paranormal community, beyond everybody being focused in their own little piece of it, I think a lot of them have the right idea, although there are a lot of people who embrace every crackpot idea out there.
Just because people investigate evil, the evil side of the paranormal, doesn't mean that they are evil. But there are people who are in this field for the wrong reason. For instance, there are psychic mediums out there that are fake and that are taking advantage of people, and it's a shame. It really is. But there are also far more people out there who are in this for the right reason.
I really like meeting new people who are interesting and, enthused about what they're doing.
We're not afraid to ask the toughest questions, and I also find that people in the paranormal community have a heightened desire, if you will, to help others. They understand more of what it's about. And that's what I do, because I think that that's what it's all about, being of service to others.
My experience with the paranormal community has been broad. I've had some really amazing experiences, and I have had some not so amazing experiences. And again, it goes to being human. We're all just trying to figure this out. There's just this excitement when you go to events where everyone's talking about the same thing you want to talk about. I just think that's exciting. It's a positive thing. We're coming together, seeking.
For people that are looking for love in their life, or looking for that powerful emotion, and they're not getting it from relationships, they're not getting it from their profession or whatever road they've kind of found themselves on in life, they could probably find some sort of emotional connection or love in that way.
The paranormal community, UFO Twitter, whatever you want to call it, is awesome. So everybody I've interviewed has been so gracious and awesome, and all the folks I've met, at different events, all the witnesses. So I really haven't had, bad people experiences, so that's just, I think, speaks to just the character, of the community. Because I'm definitely in other worlds where I've, encountered other types of people. So I do think it's a special group of people. And I disagree with a lot of them about a lot of things. And that's what's cool, is you can. So at least for now. So let's remember that, because I really hope it stays that way.
If it came out today that this was all true, that we would all go from investigators and researchers to counselors.
Seriously.
A lot of the people that you and I know are going to be on CNN and MSNBC and Fox News and on the History Channel and all, explaining exactly what all this is. you know.
And how many friends and family are going to be calling us up?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll all of a sudden be accepted back into the family again.
The seeking to understand these mysteries, I think they're so interconnected and so intertwined and so powerful that I can't think of anything else in my life personally that has made me a stronger person in faith, in belief, and I love it. You know, we can go through life, a lot of people, without believing in anything. And I wish I could just tell these people, hey, give this a try. Look at UFOs. Look at the supernatural. Look at the paranormal. Because maybe you'll laugh it off and think it's ridiculous at first, but hey, if you've given up on everything else in the world, look at this thing that's constantly like tapping you on the shoulder and being like, yeah, you think you knew everything and there's nothing left? Take a look at what we're doing, or peek behind this veil and check us out.
You don't get to pick your family. You don't get to pick your brothers and sisters and your mother and your father. You get to pick your friends. So I learned way early that you're responsible for that. You're responsible for who you call your friends.
I will say that being involved in these topics and meeting the people in these communities who are just as excited and interested as I am, it's shown me that the world can be a really funny, interesting, weird place. And I can't think of anything more rewarding than when I finally leave this life, knowing that I was able to look at these mysteries and take this journey and know that I was not alone. And whatever comes next after this life, I'll know that I made amazing friends and had some really interesting conversations at 3 a.m. over a glass of whiskey, and looked up in the sky and thought, this is a world I never expected. A world much bigger and much stranger than I possibly could have imagined. And I can't wait to see what comes next.
On and again, the signs keep on coming, they point to the end, but I hold on so tight. Back and forth in my mind.
If there is a planet like Venus that is all, gas and explosions and stuff like that, what lives there? And will we be able to perceive it? And could we just leave it alone? Because we don't do so good when we visit places. Everybody wants to meet aliens. I'm like, yes, but do aliens want to meet us? And will they be nice when we find them?
Just for one more night.
Those of us that have been in it all these years will be vindicated one day. Doesn't have to be in my lifetime. It doesn't, it doesn't have to be now. There have been so many bright, smart, highly intelligent individuals that have risked their reputation, their occupation, and so much more, in the pursuit of the truth of this.
Lost in a bad way, cost me my family. Chaos around me, can't hear my heart say, hey, that's the wrong way. Hey, that's the wrong way. Hey, that's the wrong way. That's the wrong way. You're lost in a bad way, starting to let go. Gone too far the wrong way. Can take it all back now. Been lost in a bad way. I've gotta let you go.